Hello and welcome to Odds Now. This weekend, we're off to Butlins for the UK Open darts in Minehead, the FA Cup of darts, where the big boys enter in round 4, and it is a random draw in each round. Over the 3 days, starting on Friday, the 28th of February, and finishing on Sunday, the 2nd of March. And that random element has lent itself to some shock winners in recent years of this tournament. The last 4 names on the trophy read Dimitri van den Berg, Andrew Gilding, Danny Noppert, and James Wade. I'm joined by the usual face of Matt Pyman Hill to preview this year's UK Open. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Looking forward to this one. I feel like I say I like every tournament, so I'm not going to give you that I like this tournament. But I do think that this tournament lends itself to shocks more than any other, as you just sort of confirmed there with your last 4 winners. But in doing my research for my pieces for oddsnow.com, which will be coming live in the next couple of days, I just like going even further back. That trend just continues, and it really isn't like it's not like we've had some tournaments you get a freakish run, don't you? You get a couple of years where you get surprise winners. This is consistently every year. Going back beyond that, even before Wade, Nathan Aspinall winning his first major TV title in 2019 here, Corey Cadby in the final in 2018. Peter Wright's first major win in 2017. Every single year, we seem to have a shock or a breakthrough success. And that is a trend that I am kind of following and tailing somewhat with my outright selections, which I'm sure we'll come on to shortly.
Yep, so a little bit on the format. The top 32, as mentioned, come in the 4th round. Those ranked 33 to 64 coming in the 3rd round, and so on and so on. And there is some there's about 160 total enter, and there is some pretty random names, if you like, that you may not have seen. Matt certainly has in the likes of round 1, but you may not be seeing Ali Pali anytime soon. But they're at the UK Open. There's all sorts of ways of qualifying. Just on the outright betting, a couple of things to note early doors. You might be seeing bigger prices here for the likes of Luke Littler, who's 4-1. Remember, at the moment, he's around 13-8 to win the World Championship. As a long-term comparison, that's because there's so many players entered and the random draw impact. The usual names are there at the top of the list. And also, which is again unusual for darting major, most of the bookmakers that you will see on your odds comparison websites are betting 4 places each way, which brings into the massive prices, which I'm sure Matt's going to come on to. Before we get stuck into the round 1 games, most of which are priced up, where I know you've got some interest, would you like to comment on the outright market? I mean, like I say, just scrolling through, there's some really big names, previous winners of this tournament that are at massive, massive prices. But it is one of those tournaments where everyone is in, every single member of the top 32, and basically every member of the top 64 are in. It's wide open.
Yeah, so just to give some context there, Littler 4-1, you're right. That is a price that a lot of people would, and I'm hesitant to argue against somebody who wants to come up to me and say, look, I'm backing Luke Littler 4-1 for any tournament he enters because it's Luke Littler. I do get that. But just to break it down, he's got to win 6 matches to win this title. He comes in at round 4, as most of the big boys do. So at 4-1 to win 6 matches, we're looking at roughly 1.3, 3-10, 1-3 for him to win each match as his average price. Now, against most players, he is going to be an awful lot shorter than that. However, the random element of this draw, if he draws a Premier League caliber player in his first game, which is we see it happen every single year, if he draws a Humphreys, a Van Gerwen or whatever, he ain't going to be 1.3 to win that match over six legs. So my take would be, if you do fancy Littler, I wouldn't rush to take that 4-1, actually. I would just maybe watch the first round and then assess how things go. Because, the cumulative price on offer, I don't think is that great, really. And we do see it time and time again where the big hitters draw each other at the earliest stage possible. So I touch on a little bit about trends. And I'm not a big trends man, to be honest. But I do think that this format is so unique. Without the presence of a draw bracket compared to every other tournament, it makes a massive, massive difference. There's no plotting who might have a winnable draw, where the form players are going to meet. And equally, you can look your way through to the last 16 quite easily here with some really, really kind draws as well. But I do think you have to be in good form to get into the semi-finals, which is ultimately where we get our payout. As you quite rightly referenced, 4 places on offer for each way bettors. That makes a massive difference in terms of your chances of actually copping that each way money. So what am I looking for in a winner? I'm probably looking for somebody who's chasing that breakthrough success as a reference. We've seen several players here get their first major win in Minehead. And when I narrow that list down, there's a couple that jump off the page to me. Now, you might not think their prices are particularly spectacular, but I do think their chances of a deep run here are really, really solid compared to the other names around them. First of which is Ryan Searle. He's repeatedly disappointed here at Minehead, which is effectively a local tournament for him. And it's really, for a long time, felt like the tournament where I think he's going to have his breakthrough. I do think that things might be a little bit different this year. He's won a floor tournament every year for the last 6 years, Ryan Searle, but he's never won more than one floor tournament. And he's constantly failed to hit the heights at TV tournaments. I think you can put a lot of that down to Searle's blasé attitude, really. If you see him in interviews, he often says, I would like to win a major, but I'm not too worried. I'm not that driven. I don't really care as much as a lot of these other guys. Well, I noticed a little bit of a change in tack there from him when he won a recent Players' Championship event a couple of weeks ago. In his post-final interview, he said that he was really hurt by his exit to Ryan Joyce at the World Championship in Ali Pali. That was a great game, which he came out on the wrong side of. And he's been hitting the practice board more, and he does want to make this a career best year. And I think Searle, with an attitude change, is a very, very dangerous proposition. He's playing fantastically well. You look at all his numbers. He's been the best performer across the 4 Pro Tour events, maybe bar Gerwyn Price so far. So he's in really, really good nick. As I say, this is a local tournament for him. And he's had some rotten luck in recent years. He lost 10-9 to Graham Usher last year in a game that he should have won, to be honest. Previous years, 3 years, he's gone out to Dimitri Vandenberg, Chris Dobie and Luke Humphries. So had some bad luck with the draws there, Searle. If he gets a toe into this tournament, he's playing so well that I do think you're effectively getting 7.5 to 1 if you take the 30 best price about him making the semi-finals. I think that's worth having on side. It's a solid place to start. The other man I want to back is somebody who I've questioned at times in the last year or so whether he is going to make that step. But I think Damon Heta, if he is going to do it, this might be the place he does it. Made the semi-finals last year, which was his first major semi-final. You may remember he beat Luke Littler in the game of the year for me last year. Heta averaging 107, Littler 105. But even prior to beating Littler, it was a who's who of who he had to beat to get there, beating the likes of Nathan Aspinall. There was a couple of other big names on that list as well, which elude me at the moment. But it was basically, he did not have an easy run here. And he had a really, really deep run to the semi-finals. Now, you may also recall he lost that semi-final to his friend and former housemate Dimitri Vandenberg, who went on to win the tournament, as we've mentioned earlier. I think it's fair to say that that game was badly affected by Dimitri Vandenberg's slow play, as was the final against Luke Humphries. It really, really seemed to impact Heta, and I know that loss hurt him bitterly. But it was a real sign of progress for me, and he is the ultimate in incremental games, I think, in darts. If I was to compare him and Searle, there are a lot of similarities. They're both likable characters, laid back, nice guys, quite chilled. But I think there's a real difference in determination level. And I'm taking a chance on Searle being more determined than he usually is this year. Now, with Heta, I don't have to question his determination. The thing I have to question with Heta is, can he get over the line in the big, big matches? He had a bit of a damaging defeat at the World Championship to Luke Woodhouse. And that was a game where he actually hit a 9-darter and was well in control of that contest. And I personally think that loss probably cost him a place in the Premier League. When you look at Chris Dobie and Nathan Aspinall, hadn't had particularly great seasons compared to Heta, but they just went that little bit deeper at Ali Pali and gave the PDC a decision to make. I do think Damon Heta is a Premier League player in waiting. And I think that when that breakthrough comes, because I do think it will come, there's only certain venues and certain fields where I'm willing to chance him at his current price. And this is one of them. I think you can get 45 to 1 with certain supplier 4 places, your general 40 to 1. And if you're offering me 10 to 1 4 places on him to make the semi-finals again, I think that is a real runner because he's a brutally consistent player, possibly the most consistent player on the circuit. Even when he throws in a bad game, he's got a very good B game and a very good way of getting over the line, which you definitely need in this kind of tournament. I think he has the A game to beat the big hitters, Littler, Humphries, etc., as we've seen on numerous occasions. So he ticks a hell of a lot of boxes. And the only reason that he is 40 to 1 is because he's yet to go and make a major final. But I do think it's a matter of if not when. I'm not willing to back him in every single major because I think, you know, he's got to go and take that step. But I think there's enough ticks in the box to back him at the UK Open, where the volatility will undo a lot of the regular big hitters, as previous results have shown. So they would be my two main players from the top of the outright market. And then it's just whether you want to get stuck in a little bit lower down the list as well. I'll probably limit my involvement pre-tournament. I might take a look again as it's going on, because this market is very, very volatile. So you'll see it change and change and change by the hour, particularly on Saturday. But two I would flag to you at the same price, 80 to 1. They are available to boost to 100 to 1 if you have a Ladbrokes account with that facility. I know not everybody does, but if you can find that, it's worth getting those extra 20 points. Jermaine Wattimena is one of them. He would probably be my favourite bet at the moment in this market, 100 to 1. I think he's playing as well. I think he's playing at the level of a top 8, top 16 player at the moment. And I think he's been doing that for 3 or 4 months now. Made the European Championship final in October, Grand Slam quarterfinal to follow it up. World Championship, he took apart Stefan Bowman and James Wade without losing a set, and then was dumped out by Peter Wright, rejuvenated Peter Wright. It was quite a strange week for Peter Wright, where he seemed to be back and then he seems to have gone again. Nice of him to nip in, wasn't it? But generally, Wattimena has been fantastic. Pro Tour, all 4 Pro Tours, he's looked in really good nick, averaging in the high 90s virtually every game. We've talked about him at length on this channel. Someone who throughout his career I've regarded as erratic, unreliable, capable but inconsistent, maybe lacks bottle at the big moments. I think all of those have gone in the bin for me now. I think he's a player. I really, really trust him. He's shown a good bottle against the big players as well. He's won his last 2 TV meetings with Luke Humphries for a practical example of that. So he doesn't seem to have that fear of the big players. And I think he's one of the players that nobody's going to want to draw at the moment. He's really, really in good form. His self-belief and self-confidence is high. And I think for a player like Wattimena, that is a dangerous combination. So again, you're effectively getting 20 to 1 or 25 to 1 for a semi-final berth, which I think is worth having. And Connor Scutt at the same price. We've talked about him at length again on this channel. He's a familiar name. I do think he has all the talent in the world. His Pro Tour results probably haven't reflected a really high level of performance. He's hitting more 180s per leg this season than anybody else on the PDC Pro Tour. And when you have that kind of scoring power, it's going to keep you in games. He has a fantastic record at Minehead as well. Made the quarterfinals of the Players' Championship finals in November, losing 10-9 to Dirk van Duijvenbode. And I think that was his first ever loss on the Minehead main stage in 5 attempts. So clearly quite likes the venue. I think his attitude is a plus here at the UK Open, because let's be honest, it is a bit of a chaotic tournament. There's a lot going on. You're moving all around the arena. 1 minute you're on the main stage, the next you're up in the back end in the back room. And I think he's a very relaxed guy, and I think that won't really affect him. He's had some bad luck as well, been on the wrong end of some last leg deciders in recent years here. And I don't think it would take much for Scutt to click and put a run together here again. 20 to 1 a place or 25 to 1 with the boost. They would be my 4 pre-tournament selections in the outright market. I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add here.
So Heta, Wattimena, and Scutt for Pieman there. Yeah, I mean, it puts me off betting outright just purely because of the random draw nature of it. Dirk van Duijvenbode, for example, would be on my radar, but last year he drew Luke Humphries in his first game, so it can just blow you straight out the window. Couple of things I would say. The quarterfinal, semi, and final all happen on Sunday. Quarterfinals in the afternoon, semi and final in the evening. That is a factor. When Luke Humphries was made these, I think it was his first major final in 2021 against Wade, he said that just lack of experience and know-how on those evening sessions where there's a semi and a final. Basically,
Rob Cross as well, Rob Cross lost the final a few years ago here and said he was burnt out by the final. It was a dreadful final.
So that is a factor, particularly when you're taking into account the likes of the latter two that Matt mentioned, Wattimena and Scutt, who to this point, Wattimena may be on the European Tour, but Scutt certainly not, hasn't had the experience of
Wattimena at the European Championship would have been his first time, and I think actually you're right, it did burn him out. He was dreadful in the final against Ed House, having been really good up until getting there. So yeah, I'll definitely factor that in. I got to be honest here. I'm whenever there's 4 places on offer in a darts market, I am playing with semi-finals in mind rather than finals. So even with Searle and Heta, yes, they have greater win equity or greater chance of going on and winning the title, but I'm placing that bet hoping to get the 7.5 to 1 or the 10 to 1 place element up. I think that's where they all have real good chances of getting to the final four. Then if they go on and win it, it's a bit of a bonus for me, really, because I think you're completely right in what you say. Going and winning these tournaments, it's a whole different kettle of fish.
And another two things I would mention, those that come in at round 3, i.e. Wattimena and Scutt are in that section, that's their games are first to 6 legs in that third round.
That's why you need some luck.
Can be more chaos and more luck needed. From the 4th round onwards, it gets longer. 4th round is first to 10, and so's the 5th and 6th round and the quarterfinal, actually. So it doesn't get longer than that until the semi and the final itself. So that's something to take into account. And my final point, Pyman, before we move on to the round 1 games, which is where you come alive, Dimitri van den Bergh cheated his way to the UK Open last year. I don't think enough people mention it. I thought it was an absolute disgrace.
I did as well.
Particularly in the final against Humphries. I thought Humphries could have made more of it, and I think fans could have made more of it.
Well, Heta and Humphries both could have, couldn't they? But if you were picking two guys, not to make a fuss about Dimitri van den Bergh, Humphries is just not the type to do that at all. And Heta obviously has a friendship with him from living with him, where he wouldn't probably want to call him out. But I think you could see both players were, and they're two of the cooler characters. They were both visibly frustrated and distracted by the antics that were going on. It was crap, wasn't it? I mean, from a viewer perspective, if nothing else, awful to watch.
Couple of prices I would note, not saying I'm backing them. Van den Bergh, a previous winner, I know I've just mentioned him negatively, he's 50 to 1. Noppert, a previous winner, 60 to 1. Michael Smith is 60 to 1. 6-0. I typed them prices out this morning. 60 to 1 for the former world champion. He has completely fell off a cliff. He's been awful in the Pro Tour so far.
He's got arthritis, hasn't he? Yeah. He's been diagnosed with arthritis, and he's going through a treatment and potential operations on the horizon. So I think that would, the fact I'm still not really interested in backing him at 60 to 1. It's just because of that news coming out. I mean, if that news hadn't come out and he was 40, I might have backed. I mean, I made a case for him in the Masters, and then I watched him in his game, and he still averaged 97 odd, but he was holding his hand every throw. And I thought after a set, there's something not right here. And then lo and behold, after I've got my money down, I find out he's struggling with arthritis, obviously. But it's a shock to see a name like that big.
Mike De Decker, who I was typing out as the 5th favourite for the World Championships only 3 months ago, is 66 to 1. He's not done a lot since then. And James Wade was one that I wanted to note at 125 to 1. He's not got the averages up there to compete with the very best, but he's a winner of this tournament previously.
Three-time winner.
And he still fancies it himself, which is, good to see from him there. But yeah, I think you should be waiting until you get to the, you're going to get less of a price, obviously, but taking more of a view when you get to the final 16, the final 8. That's how I'll be playing it. Is there any round 1 games that are already priced up that have taken your eye, Pyman? And at this time, we should remind viewers of the success that Matt had during the World Championships in those early rounds with the lesser known players and finding good angles and good winners to bet on.
Thank you. Yeah. That's good of you to say. It's true, and I've always said it as well. Like, I don't make any secret about it. I struggle backing winners in matches between two of the best players in the world because I feel like they're so exposed. There's not that many angles. Algorithms, computers are spitting out the numbers, and they're generally as sharp as me and you who watch it all year round. That you don't get that many rigs. The only time I seem to benefit from backing match betting on the main tour is when there's a little bit of information that the market hasn't quite been privy to yet, and you're getting a good price there. And there is a little bit of that involved here. But what we also have here in the early rounds is there's they've got to price these matches up. Like every bookie has priced these matches up because it's a major tournament first round. But what you have is you have a load of players which there is little to no data on. 4 UK Open pub qualifier players who there's literally no data on other than like their county darts statistics. So you're bound to find some angles if you look hard enough. I think I have found a few, so hopefully, and I will put all these up on oddsnow.com as well, if anybody want a little bit more reasoning, but I'll just whiz through some of them. Nico Springer is playing Core Decker. And I'm going to back Core Decker with a +2.5 leg start at 5 to 6. Springer is somebody you'll have seen me mention really positively on a few occasions. But I do think that Decker has proven himself in his early weeks of being a 2-card holder. I've been more than capable of giving him a tough game. Springer has lost here on both previous visits. He's a heavy favourite to win the match. I could see him sneaking through, but I think he'll be given a stern examination from Decker, who's done really well in his early weeks on tour as well. +2.5 leg handicaps 5 to 6. I think that's a little bit big. Tom Bissell is even money to beat Marvin van Velzen, 2 new 2-card holders. I actually think this is the wrong way around, and I think the market will flip, and I think Bissell will go off odds on. They're both quite well made good starts to their Pro Tour career, but I think Bissell in particular will have caught the eye of a couple of sort of floor followers. He had a good run to, I think it was round 4 of a Pro Tour event, and got a couple of good scalps. His numbers have generally been in the mid to high 90s. Van Velzen's probably a little bit better known because he's played a lot on the Super Series, and he is a good operator himself. But I was just a little bit surprised, given the recent form, that they've not put Bissell in as a favourite there. That's not a strong fancy. It's a market I fancy to flip-flop outright.
I think it already has, to be honest. I think it already has.
Okay. Well, that was these prices were taken yesterday, so they could have flipped. There you go. Well, I'm on the right lines anyway. Scott Williams to beat Wessel Nijman. 2 better known players. Scott Williams is nearly 2 to 1 here to win this match. This is a best of 11 legs match here between Nijman, who undoubtedly is one of the most talented players around, but is still lacking in big stage experience and pedigree, and has thrown away a couple of big stage matches with subpar performances against Scott Williams, who does absolutely naff all on the floor. And then when it becomes a big TV event, suddenly turns into a top 16 level player. And we had a similar situation with Scott Williams, didn't we, at the World Championship, where he's put in against Nico Springer, made an underdog, and he didn't like that, and he turned up and he played fantastically. And I do think Williams is one of the biggest improvers for a TV camera on the entire circuit. And I think Nijman, short format, there's a lot of expectation on him. Like I say, he's a massive favourite here, 2 to 5, maybe even shorter, getting nearly 2 to 1 on Scott Williams. I think that's worth a chance over 11 legs. And Nijman, generally a player I like to be on side with, as you know, but it is all about prices. And I think Williams is capable of causing an upset here. 2 bets left for you here. Jim Williams, I thought was a bit big to beat Martin Lukeman. 11 to 8, Jim Williams. Now, we've not seen any of Jim Williams this year. He skipped the 4 Pro Tours, but that's not unusual behaviour for Jim Williams. You don't need to panic about that.
He'll eventually lose his tour card doing that.
Yeah, he will. And he spoke about it last year, and he said, I am in danger of doing that. I really want to play more, but I've got to get other things in order. And look, I'm not privy to his business. What maybe he has a plan where he's going to get out of his business by a certain time and commit to darts. But like you say, he could easily lose his tour card. He messes around, skipping events and stuff, but there's no doubt in his quality. He was very unlucky to go out at the World Championships the way he did. And I think he's a quality operator, Williams. I really do like him. Lukeman is someone else I like. Had a good year last year, but he's been a bit shoddy. His form on the floor not been great this year. He got a couple of wins on that Pro Tour where, was it Pro Tour 3, where it was a really cold venue. And he won 2 games, but his averages were in the low 80s. It was just scrambling through. So I don't think he's quite hit the ground running yet this year. And I think 11 to 8 about someone like Jim Williams, who's probably got as much, if not more, pedigree than Lukeman on the big stage, is worth taking. Now, this is my bet of the round here coming up. This is the one to write down and try and get on. Simon Stevenson on the minus handicap against Jules van Dongen. Now, I've told you a little bit off camera previously about Van Dongen. He's struggling badly with dartitis at the moment. It's quite sad to see because he definitely was one of the better players to come through from America in recent years. Has some great wins to his name, but he's really, at the moment, I'm afraid, gone at the game. You look at his averages on the 4 Pro Tours, he's yet to average above 68 in 4 games. His throw has completely gone. He's lost 6-1, 6-0, 6-0, 6-1 in his 4 games. There's even, apparently, I've yet to see this, but I've seen someone who I would trust saying that he said in an interview with a YouTube channel that he's considering starting to throw left-handed. That's how bad it's got. So, to be honest, it's a shame because he might have to end up handing his tour card in. But he's trying to play through it at the moment. There is no obvious evidence to me that he's going to be able to suddenly recapture any kind of form, and I'm firmly expecting him to turn up at Minehead and average under 70 again. Simon Stevenson, who would have under normal circumstances, been a big underdog for this game. He's a steady operator, maybe not a name everyone's familiar with. He's in his 50s, but he has got course form here. He qualified for the UK Open several times between sort of 2016 and 2020. He actually made a quarter-final of the UK Open, losing to Gerwyn Price in 2019. He's from Plymouth or somewhere in the southwest, and a really, really solid player. I think he's got enough big stage experience to not be dragged down too much by Van Dongen's struggles. I do think he'll ultimately take care of him. -3.5 leg handicap is available, I think, at around even money, or 10 to 11, you'll tell me.
20 to 21. He actually, Simon Stevenson actually opened at 1 to 2 favourite for this game, and he's now as short as 1 to 20.
I've got a few quid on him at a bigger price, but yeah, I didn't get the 1 to 2, but weren't too far off because, I feel bad saying it, but Van Dongen is literally, as I say, gone at the game at the moment, and you do have to take advantage of these. One angle that people can still try and take advantage of, should they wish, the 6-0 correct score for Simon Stevenson, which, as I say, has landed in 2 of Van Dongen's 4 matches. I think is as big as 8 to 1.
15 to 2, yeah.
Well, that's gone. Well, still, look, it doesn't take a genius to say that the 15 to 2 might look a good bet if Van Dongen's averaging 66, as he has been all season. So, yeah, it's one to strongly consider. Like I say, the win market has caught up. I'm not sure the handicaps and the correct score markets have caught up enough yet. I think you could quite feasibly Dutch 6-0, 6-1, 6-2, or even just 6-0, 6-1. I've played the 6-0, the 6-1, and the handicap. And like I say, I got an outright bet on, but I wouldn't recommend taking it a 1 to 20. But yeah, when it was 1 to 2, 2 to 5, it was worth a look. So they're the kind of things that I'm looking for in these early rounds. There are little quirks and ricks and stuff, but yeah, like I said, this tournament is probably the best tournament around for in-play betting. It's so volatile. The outright market, you are, if you're glued to Odds Checker on Friday or Saturday, you are guaranteed to get some good outright prices in running, and then you just need the rub of the green. But yeah, looking forward to it, and we'll try and get some. Well, I've got a couple of pieces coming up on oddsnow.com this week too, if you want to dive in more depth.
Yeah, very good. All covered there from an outright perspective, from a first round, and I think there's actually some games in round 3 and 4 priced up as well, just the way the draws worked out, but not all of them. Because they've done the draw in advance, if you like, but then they don't do it in advance any longer. So after round 4 is complete, then they'll draw round 5, etc., etc. Matt will be putting all the insight, the detail, and the selections in his columns on oddsnow.com. And if you haven't already checked it out, have a look at the new weekly podcast hosted by Matt, which is called Better Days Ahead. Is that right? I found it really insightful. I really liked it.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, we're 2 episodes in, so you're not too far behind to catch up if you haven't listened to it. But yeah, and yeah, we've got content coming left, right, and centre on Odds Now at the moment, so make sure you hit subscribe as well.
Yeah, and you might even find a written column by myself looking at the UK flat horse racing game.
May well do.
But that's for people with an appetite for that as well. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back now with more betting insight here on Odds Now.